Now we're going to take whatever piece you're engraving into and put it on the table. Now it's as simple as you could lay it anywhere on the table you want, but the tricky part is making sure it's not crooked. Obviously your engraving is going to be way off kilter from what you want, so it's got to be straight. Now probably the most basic way is, of course, on top of this table that I always have a tape measure, just measure, okay, that's about 6 inches, that's about 6, and refine it, okay, so that it's straight. There, great. Then I can take clamps and clamp it down. And that's perfectly fine, that works great. You could also line it up with the edge of one of these T-tracks. Because these were engraved with the CNC, I know that that's the path that the head takes. So lining that up works just as well. Here are some different clamps. These hold down clamps are very simple to use. Simply put the end of the bolt into one of the T-tracks and loosen enough for it to get over top, and then tighten it down. And I would do that one on each corner. Now the downside of using these, they are very convenient, is if I'm engraving very close to the edge, I can't get a good grip. If I have to pull this off so far, I could even damage the edge. And no matter what, I always run the risk of the head of the bit running into this. These are made of aluminum and they do machine, but it'll destroy the bit. So these work just fine, but they are very large and easy to hit. So if that's a problem or you're not sure in any way, I highly recommend using the smaller bits. These are called low profile clamps so that I can hold it much lower. Now these sit on the outside like this. I'll put them in the track in a second, and then you can tighten them down. Now I mentioned that it's very easy for this to be off like that. So what I've done on the table is I've drilled a couple of holes that will help keep it straight on the machine. So you can see some of them in the table. I've got a number 9 there, a 10, a number 11, number 12 engraved into the bed. So let's say I want to use offset number 9. I call these offsets. I take these 1/4 inch wooden dowels, and you need at least 3 of them. One there and one there. That's got to be right next to the number. And depending on how large your board is, the farther out you go, the straighter it's going to stay. And now that is set, and again, the CNC machine drilled these holes, so I know that that is exactly the path that it will take. So the nice thing about these offsets is I have them pre-programmed into Mach 3 that this corner is the offset. On number 10, it'll be up here, number 11 is up here, 12 is here. So the offsets are already programmed in. Now that it's in place, I can put any of my clamps on. I can clamp it down with these, that's fine. Or if I want to use these, that's great. In this case, because this is the part that actually clamps, I want to clamp against where my stops are. So here's how you put it in. You simply, there's a washer and a spacer here. You have to hold the washer up and slide it into the T-track. Okay, same thing here. Hold the washer up, push the spacer down, and slide it in. Sometimes it takes a little while to get used to that. Now I don't want to push it away from my stops here, because that's really important. So I'm just going to hold it in place and snug that down a bit. Push this against your board and snug that down. But I haven't actually clamped it yet, so the board can still move. Now I go at an angle, and this part is where it actually clamps in, and it's surprisingly tight. And then of course I'll put a set here. Make sure before you run it to pull the dowels out. They are fairly tight, but they should come right out. So I'm going to pull these 2 out, that's fine. I'll pull this one out when I get the other clamp on. Now that I've got the piece clamped down onto the table, we need to find its home position, get its XYZ figured out, and then import the G-code. So I've already told you that I put it on offset number 9. Now what does that mean? Right over here it says current offset. Current offset, we only use number 1. Number 1 is the one that just changes all the time. I'm always moving that offset. I never have it set to anything specific. So I always move it and change it. So I told you it's number 9. So type in number 9, enter. Now that didn't do anything on the machine, so I want to double check that it's correct. So I'm going to go down here, manual data input, and I want it to go to X0, Y0, its home position. X0, Y0, and hit enter. And the CNC machine will move over to that 0. And so now I can check on the machine and double check and say, yes, indeed, that is X0, Y0. If you, to get back so I can manually move it with the arrow keys on the keyboard, I kind of punch here, click here a couple times. I can hit page down, and I can even double check and get it really close. Sure enough, that is it. It shouldn't be too hard to tell. And at that point, I will just park the spindle and get it out of the way. Great. Now what I have to do is get its Z. So I have the X, Y correct. I need to do the Z. So by using the arrows on the keyboard, and remember the front of the machine is where the emergency stop is. The front of the machine is when I'm sitting at the computer, it's to the right of the machine. So you need to remember which arrow is which. In my case, I'm going to use the surface of the board, and most of the time you'll use the surface of the board. It's very rare you'll use any other reference. So place the tip of whatever bit is in there over your board, and you're going to push Smart Tool Setup right here. You press that, it says, is the spindle position over the mobile start tool pad? It is not. So I need to grab that tool pad, which is on magnets right here. Put it under the bit, nice and flat, so there's no dip. Now it is, and I'll hit yes. Now it's asking, am I running a program with multiple tools? Now, for the most part, just say yes. I am running a program with multiple tools. There are times that I don't have to, but I have to change this bit. So just say yes. Multiple tools, absolutely. And now the head will drop onto the pad. There's a little bit of an electric current running through the bit. It'll ground it when it touches the pad, so it'll know exactly when it touches. So it'll touch, it'll raise up, and then go slower and touch again to refine it, and now it knows exactly where it is. Now my Z is set. Now it says move the start tool to the home position. In other words, it wants me to take this pad and put it back right where I got it from. Hit enter or press OK, and now it will do the exact same thing on that pad. It's going to go all the way down, touch off, and it'll do it a second time. Now it knows the distance from that pad to where my board is, so anytime I have to change the bit, it will touch off of that pad and it'll be perfect, ready to run. The very last thing you're going to do, all of your offsets are set. We happen to be at number 9. My X, Y, and Z's are correct. Now we can import the G code. And remember, you want the G code on the laptop. You don't want to run from one of those thumb drives. So actually bring it onto the laptop. Simply go over here to load code, and desktop or whatever you're running, there's many different things you can run. Find whatever it is you're going to be running, whether it's in the wood safes or whatever it is you are doing. I'll just grab any G code and just import it. It doesn't really matter what it is. Make sure it's yours. It should have your name on it. Now you can see it here. If you want, you can zoom in a little. Unfortunately, it only zooms to the center, so I can only get it about that far. But that's what I'm going to run. From there, press cycle start. And what it will do, you'll see the machine move and say, put in the bit that you need. Now, how do I know which bit it is? To double check, end mill 0.25. So this tells me what tool I need. So I can go in with the wrenches, change the bit, and then hit OK, and it will touch off and start engraving my project. I like to hover right beside the machine, at least to start, so I can either hit cycle stop here or the emergency stop on the front of the machine. But if everything works out fine, if it does have multiple bits in it, the machine will stop, give you this exact idea to change the tool, and it will tell you right here what to change. Then hit OK, and it'll take off and continue your cuts.